Beards Media, and I would love to work with you. If you need merchandise for your company, organization, band, softball team, whatever, I can help. From name brand apparel to promotional items, large orders or small, online stores, and more, I can help your brand stand out. AKC Marketing is local, based in Johnston, and we are an employee-owned business, so our costs are low and our turnaround times are fast. But most importantly, we give you personal service to make sure you get exactly what you're looking for. Email me at andrew@akcmarketing.com or find me on social media, and let's make some cool stuff together. Now sit back and enjoy this Three Beards Media podcast.
Welcome everybody to a new episode of Fall Starts. I am your host Chris Shipley with my co-host and friend Bill Blank. Billy, what's up, man?
Hello, Chris. I told you before we came on, you look much more crisp and much better.
Maybe it's the 18 pounds I've lost. Think that could be?
Have you lost 18 pounds?
I've lost
Congratulations,
18 pounds, baby. That's right.
What are you doing to do that? Anything special?
I have cut back on what I eat quite a bit, counting some calories, stuff like that. So just a calorie deficit.
Volume, basically lowering the volume of the intake.
And drinking a crap ton of sugar-free Gatorade.
Yeah, that's
I can't drink water, so
it's hard. Water's hard for me too, because water's refreshing if I've like broken a sweat.
Yeah,
I feel like, or I'm really super hot, even not necessarily working out, just super hot.
Right.
Then water is like super refreshing because I don't need flavor. Then it's like I just need it so bad. But outside of that, it's really hard for me to just drink water.
Yeah,
I need some flavor. So yeah, sugar-free Gatorade is a good way to go. And there's a lot of shaky deals.
I have I have some liquid IV in the morning, and some water on the way to work, and then
sugar. They have sugar-free liquid IV now, don't they?
Yep. So
that's good.
I got
I'm wearing I'm wearing my own shirt to the concert.
There tonight. You go. Hey, we're bringing that up. We'll bring that up. So
our merch.
That's right. Let's talk about a few housekeeping things, and then we'll bring on our guest.
Gotcha.
But the first thing I want to bring up is our current fundraiser that we got going on for AJ. AJ Gale is his family is going to Boston for 10 to 14 days. AJ has half a heart he's going to go get and has Down syndrome. Amy Addison, who is a content creator for us for Hot Mess Happy Hour, is his respite care worker. So they needed some funds for this trip. So Three Beards Media, Green Beret Realty, and Teddy Holly at Alpha Ventures combined to match dollar for dollar, almost up to $1,700 in donations. And we are sitting at almost $5,700. And I would love to see.
It's like over for that's almost 58. That's 5,745.
So we would love to get to the goal of 6,000. So if you're watching,
that's only $255 away. That's
right.
Nothing. That's nothing.
You can go to our Twitter account and our Facebook account. It's pinned at the top. Just go right in there and make a donation. Let's get that family to be able to go to Boston. So,
man, talk about having the deck stacked against you.
Oh man. That kid, and he is just one of the best kids.
Of course he is.
Met him, and the family is just overwhelmed with kindness with the support that they're getting too. So, we got to talk about. I've got so many things here I want to talk about. Let's see. Let's bring this one up. How about our award that we're up for? So. Billy, we nominated and made the cut for Best Wellness Podcast in Iowa by the Iowa Podcast Awards. Pretty proud of this one. We've worked really hard at at making this an important venue for us. So September 15th, we are up for Best Wellness and Relationship Podcast in its own category, but we're also up for Iowa's People's Choice Awards. So again, if you're watching this,
is that one not a public vote?
No. So this one is one based off of judges who will listen to the pods.
Oh shit! Well, we're done. We're done. It was nice to be nominated. It was really good. An honor to be nominated.
I think the mushroom talk will put us right over the hump. I think
as soon as we hit the shrooms part of the show,
100%.
You know what? I wonder though, do you think they'll like just listen to the latest one, or do you think they'll actually dig in?
I think they'll dig in.
You think so?
I think they'll dig in.
I think they should binge.
Right?
Yeah, I think they should binge every one of these podcasts before they decide who the winner is.
That's right. And then we are less than a month away from this event. Who's that young buck on the front of that?
Is that thuggish looking?
Who raised that kid?
Yeah, somebody that didn't know what they were doing. Pretty obvious.
So Three Beards Media is a proud primary sponsor of the Absolute Pro Wrestling event that's going to happen at the Rec Center in West Des Moines on September 14th. You can get tickets. You can contact Absolute Pro Wrestling, get tickets, go watch Billy's kid, Jackson King.
That's right. Jackson King. That's him in the front.
That's
right up front. The Des Moines zone. They're really counting on him to sell tickets. So let's.
Yeah.
Well.
So
I am
super excited to go watch it.
Honestly, it is. It's so fun, dude. Like, you know, I hadn't watched wrestling in so long, you know, since my kid got older, and I'd watch it with him when he was little or whatever. But like, I've been so far removed, and to go watch him now and like go with a big group of friends that have all watched him grow up.
Yep.
And suspend belief, like, and get totally into it. It reminds me of like medieval times.
Yeah.
That's what pro wrestling is kind of. It's, you have the white knight and the black knight. There's good and there's evil, and there's clear cut sides, and you know, you want good to triumph, and sometimes they don't. And like, it's so
it's going to be fun. I'm taking the boys. The boys have never been to a local, like, I've never been to like a local wrestling show like that.
The best way to put it is indie. Yeah.
So I am super excited to take,
because these guys are from all over.
So, so we're going to,
they wrestle everywhere. But
we're going to tear the house down. I'm super excited.
Yeah.
I'm going to get some front row seats so I can like scream at your kid.
Tell him
what a douchebag he is.
Here's what we have to do. Well, I don't know if he's going to be a heel or not. I don't know what his deal is on this one. But you know, I remember I think it was the first one right after the lockdown. My friends and I think I had about 15 people, 12 to 15 people, and we had the whole front row. And we all went to Burger King and got Burger King crowns and wore our Jackson King t-shirts and our Burger King crowns.
That's awesome.
And it was awesome. We need to probably do that shit again.
Oh, we need to do that. All right. Well,
we need to go, because we've got our allotment. We should go get that mini.
That's
crown.
right. We can do that. We can do that. All right. Well, let's do this. Let's introduce our newest advertiser. We're so excited to have Green Beret Realty, Dan Douglas, on the pod and a sponsor. He stepped up, is sponsoring all of the Three Beards Media podcasts. So let's go ahead and play his ad, and then when we come back, I'll let you introduce our guest. All right?
Let's do this.
In 2023, a crack Green Beret named Dan Douglas retired his military command and promptly escaped to a full-time career in real estate. Today, this man is wanted by home buyers and sellers who want to survive the process without spending a fortune. If you have a home to sell or want to buy one, maybe you can hire Dan Douglas at Green Beret Realty. You can find him at greenberetrealty.com. greenberetrealty.com.
Swear to God, it might be my
I
favorite
love
ad I've
that
ever made.
commercial. I love that commercial.
When we started talking, I immediately started envisioning somehow we got to rope in the A-Team theme somehow. And my buddy,
did you make that?
yeah. So my buddy Dave Campbell, who used to work in the radio business, who worked in the radio business, did the cover, did the verbiage for us. He's cut all our new ads. So so I spliced that together and pulled that together. So
that was outstanding.
Yeah, it's so good. All right, man. Bring on our guest.
Okay. Well, I don't know. You booked him. Do you want to introduce him, or do you want me?
You can introduce him. You're better at introducing guests than I am.
I am a professional.
You are.
Anyway, so this guy actually, I have a bit of history with that's interesting. We met face to face for the first time after the reality show I did with Shatner aired.
Wait, what?
Yeah, that's when I met our guest. At the time he was doing a show with Steve Dace, and Steve is a big like Star Wars, Star Trek nerd, right?
Sure.
And I had reached out to him a while before that, when I was putting on a show that was like a benefit for the troops or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like bullied my way onto the show one day to get airtime and plug the show. And my grandmother called me and said, this is the next day after the first episode aired.
Yeah.
My grandmother called me and goes, Billy, Steve Dace is talking about you right now. And I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah, I think he's talking about the show. And he said that that Bill Blank, I know that guy. I know I've seen him before. So I called in and was like, yeah, and so we talked, and then they had me on later as a guest to kind of talk about the show and stuff. And so from that point on, we have gone back and forth here and there, and he was living in Tulsa for a while. And we went to lunch together when I was doing the club down there. And this guy is probably the most knowledgeable Hawkeye fan that to possibly ever walk the planet.
I'm aware.
I think he probably knows everything about Iowa football. Like, people talk about me being like the biggest Hawkeye fan they know. I am not even close to this guy. Like, I'm the biggest asshole Hawkeye fan that they know. I'm the biggest idiot about it. There's no doubt about that. But this guy right here, I mean, he's Hawkeyepedia. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for John too, because John Miller, by the way, right here. Hello, John.
Hey guys.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you got it.
One of the thing that I love most about John is he's one of those guys that's a rare breed that, when presented with new information, changed their opinion. Like, you just don't see that anymore.
Nope.
People pitch tents and they're just gonna die on those hills, and I appreciate it when somebody doesn't do that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's kind of funny because, I mean, a lot of people in my family are like, what the hell happened to the Millers when they went to Oklahoma? And everybody we knew in Oklahoma, no joke, what the hell happened to the Millers? Asking my daughter, what happened to your parents is after we were shunned like we were Amish. But yeah, man, new data, new ways to look at things. And I'm certainly not going down. I'm not going to go down in any dogmatic coffin. That's for sure.
So tell me about the shunning. What's that about? What happened there? You were shunned by your community down there?
Do we have time?
We've got all the time in the world. I want to know this story. This is interesting. I didn't know anything about this.
Well, yeah, this is going to open up a lot of cans of worms.
Let's fucking go, baby.
I was kind of wanting to talk about psilocybin and MDMA, but we can do that.
We will get there, buddy. We will get there.
But so when we went down to Oklahoma in 2013, that was literally on the heels of me coming out of the darkest period I was ever in mentally in my entire life. Had probably committed what I would call a financial infidelity with my wife the previous year. I fancied myself as an entrepreneur, and I am, but I fancied myself as a CEO. I was incredibly arrogant, self-righteous, thought I knew everything about everything. And I didn't realize that P.T. Barnum probably wasn't the accountant for the circus.
Right. Yeah.
That. And I found out the hard way. Long story short, I always had an unhealthy belief that I could out earn any of my mistakes. And I always had until I didn't. And my identity, my self-worth was primarily wrapped up in being John Miller of Hawkeye Nation, or John Miller of WHO, or John Miller of the Big Ten Network. Because that's the future I always envisioned for myself when I was 13. And I reached those things, and I got very full of myself. And the pride, the arrogance, the narcissism, it needed to go. And I would not have signed up for how it went, but I'm glad that it did. So I came clean to my wife that I'd been, we were behind on our taxes. I owed the government $200,000. I owed credit cards $50,000. Nearly cost me my marriage. Somehow, I lost 30 pounds in the first quarter of 2013, and was pretty much envisioning what my life was going to look like without my daughters in it, which led me to about 10 minutes of considering suicide, because I really had a George Bailey moment that I was worth more dead than alive. And thankfully, I was able to banish that thought, didn't go through with ever even, didn't go any farther. Told my wife,
think it would have been more entertaining if you would have had an Aaron Hernandez thought.
There you go. Well, yeah. That'd have made a bigger splash. I see. Anyway. I like the tenor and tone that we're going to get to tonight. Gallows humor is the best therapy.
That's that whole talk about hard things and having a good time. Yeah. That's what we. There's a perfect example of what we're talking about.
So, my wife forgave me. And I needed to find a real job. Not that working in media isn't, but I needed to find something to get out of a $250,000 hole.
Sure. Yeah. That requires something steady.
It does.
It's a slow burn.
And I talked to a few insurance companies in Iowa. I just wasn't feeling it. Because there was a whole new lexicon to learn. Pretty much I was going to have to start up a scratch book. I didn't have the money to buy a book. And I'm like, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to make some calls back into the energy industry, because I did wholesale propane from 1996 to 2003. Made a couple of calls, got back into it, and got back into it at the same salary that I was earning when I left it 10 years previous, and wondering what the heck this media career was for. But I was excited to have an opportunity, and I was excited that I still had my family.
Yeah, sure.
And we moved down to Tulsa. Wausau, Oklahoma. And for the 3 months, we rented a 1-bedroom furnished apartment. All of our stuff was in storage the whole summer because of a house that fell through when we moved down there. But we were happy. There wasn't anything that could knock me off that hill at that time, because I still had my family.
Yeah, and I was so happy that you put it back together. Yeah,
absolutely. Everything else, as I went through that very galvanizing situation, everything was revealed to me. Like, this is what matters. My wife even said at one point in time, because she was like, have you considered bankruptcy? And there's nothing wrong with bankruptcy.
Right.
But I said, I don't, but my answer was wrong. I said, I don't want to file bankruptcy because I don't want people to find out about it. And this is after she forgave me, and she got pretty pissed. And she's like, John, when are you going to start caring more about your family as opposed to what people think about you? And I have an answer to that question. It was right then, right at that moment. And a very freeing experience that. Mm-hmm. So I went to work. I was driving a Ford F-150 that the mortgage officer lent me because the house fell through because of a mistake he made, and he didn't want to lose his job. And I couldn't go out and buy a new car for a number of reasons. One being you can't have a new vehicle when you're going to try to get a house. Credit inquiries.
Yeah.
It's Tulsa, Oklahoma in the summer. It's 104 degrees every damn day, and that thing didn't have air conditioner. And I'm just bouncing down the road, listening to CCR, just happy as a clam because I got my family together. And I also was grateful to get another opportunity to get back in energy. Grateful for the opportunity to have chased all my 13-year-old dreams of one day being the voice of the Hawkeyes, having a national television show, and scratching those itches. And now it's like, you know what? I'm getting back into energy. I'm going to conquer this now. But it was a different attitude. That wasn't an arrogance. That was just a belief in myself. Also, I had no other option.
Yeah, that was
option.
That
I'm sure you guys have talked about this. But when you're down in a hole, there is only one way to look, and that is towards the escape hatch, the way out, up, the light, whatever you want to call it, whatever figurative aspects you want to apply to it. That's it. So to me, the only way out was forward. And I then realized what those years in media and blogging and social networking and building a social network, what that all was for. Because I got back into selling propane and everyone was still doing it the same way they were when I left 10 years earlier. They were still sending out faxes. It's the most boring industry possible. And I thought, hey,
I'll have an email list and do fucking about 10% of the work every day that you guys are doing and make triple your money.
That's it. I started a blog called The Propane Buzz. And before I started cold calling people, because nobody likes cold calling. All right. No. Nobody likes rejection.
But it's honestly not that bad. Cold calling isn't that horrible when there's a means to an end. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but man, it
does suck. I mean, I get it. And it's
dude, if you really liked cold calling and were good at it, you'd be mega loaded.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's anybody that can and does is. And I didn't like cold calling. So I thought, you know what? I do like cool calling or warm calling. So the territory that I was given, which was a territory that nobody else wanted because it sucked. I found email addresses of all the propane retailers in that territory. I created an email listserv. I started emailing my opinions on propane to every one of them every day. And then when I picked up the phone and called them for the first time 3 months later, they answered. Oh, you're that propane buzz guy. I learned all of that. I learned the subtle power of celebrity through what I did with the Iowa media and building Hawkeye Nation and all that. And essentially everything that anybody knows about me from the state of Iowa, which is pretty much 99% Hawkeyes, that was my undergraduate work. That is what prepared me to get back into energy. And I crushed it. And I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm thankful for it. And I can't believe that's been 11 years ago now that we left. And after 4 years into it, I was out of debt. We didn't file bankruptcy. And again, there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's there for a reason. I am living my absolute best life, but more importantly, my daughter Grace, to answer your question about why we were shunned, she's living her best life now. At the age of 14, this is 2017, we had found her diary. Everything I'm saying, she's already shared in a podcast with my wife that's available to the public, so I'm not talking out of school.
Oh, okay.
We found her diary where she was self-harming and she was a little suicidal ideation, and we talked with her about that. And we came to find out and unearth that she was dealing with some nothing of a, she wasn't raped or sexually assaulted, but it was more psychological American Sharia bullshit from within the church. Like, hey, you please don't wear tight shirts because that might cause the boys in your youth group to sin and think ill thoughts of you, which instantly made her feel shameful. It made her feel
fault.
Less,
yeah,
made her feel like it was her fault. Which
that is the number one thing that happens with abuse. This is, and I've talked about my own experiences before. I understand the number one thing that I understand that goes across the board. I don't care how it happened, is the shame, and the shame is what gets exploited.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it triple horrible.
Yeah,
especially for a child at that age.
Right. Right.
those developmental where they already feel awkward. They already have a lack of self-confidence. They
Right.
already don't know who they are.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No. Please interject because I'm an airbag. So that was one thing. There were several other things, and it was traumatic. It was church trauma. And in and about that time, my wife and I were leading Bible studies. This is 6 years ago, right? 6 years ago, I was also being asked to be an elder in a church, right? So those of you who've followed me these 6 years, you're like, what? I was out of town one weekend on a propane convention, and my wife was going to lead the marriage class that weekend, and she did. And two of the men in that class, we were all friends, went to the pastor and the elders and said, this is inappropriate. A woman was teaching us in church. And the pastor reached out to us, and I said, well, you're going to need to come to my house and talk to me about this. And he did. And he said that we don't allow that because we don't believe that's biblical. I'm like, wait, let me make sure I'm clear. You don't believe that a woman teaching in church is biblical? What is your justification for it? And he gave me a couple of verses from Paul. I think it might have been in Corinthians, but it was, Paul, was, in Corinthians. If it's not Corinthians, sue me. But it was Paul was wrote a letter to one of the churches that he'd founded. And that church, some of the women in that church had sort of fallen back to their pagan ways, if you will, according to the Bible. And my viewpoint is Paul was speaking to those women. He wasn't speaking about all women for all time, which is the majority of the human species. And this church said, yes, that's what we believe. And I said, you guys are crazy. And at that juncture,
so in this Bible verse, he's saying to these women that were
stepping out, right?
Yeah, he was saying to them, you don't get to say shit to anybody about anything. Basically.
Yeah, we don't want you women to speak up in church because
you women don't
line with the program, right? Right. So this was all, so that was another crack in the armor. And then that led me to for the first time in my life, I was so angry and bitter over what had been happening with my daughter, not realizing that this trauma very likely led to the onset of bipolar 2 disorder for her, which we would deal with and nearly lose her just 2 years ago. It led me to finally say, is profanity allowed in this program?
Yep.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. It finally led me to say, fuck my fear that I've been indoctrinated with since I was a child, since I was hearing Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so, sung to me by my mom before I even knew what the English language was. And I don't blame my parents because they were also the children of indoctrination.
Yes.
And their parents were, and their parents were. I thought, if you want me to blame anybody, I blame Emperor Constantine's mom in 325 AD and Roman Emperor Apollonius and the Caesaropropism that he instituted in 397 AD, or CE for the real ones.
For the real ones.
Yeah. So I started to look into things because I know I didn't even care about the fear of hellfire and damnation, which is why I never questioned anything ever. There were periods of my time, and this was when I was on the air doing the John Miller Show and also Miller and Dace, where I would just ask friends who were really plugged into the political world, and I could give two craps at that time. Hey, tell me who to vote for. Oh, vote for this guy. Okay. That's kind of how religion was for me. Oh, this is what I was taught. This is the truth. This is what it is. Until I started looking.
Yeah.
And
that's my hang up almost exclusively is when you come at me telling me, well, if you want to know the truth, I'll tell you, like when you use the word truth for something you can't prove.
Correct.
I'm done. I'm done talking to you.
Right. Well, because then you ask them, well, what's your proof? And they'll say, well, the Bible. And that's like taking a power strip and plugging the 3-prong cord of the power strip into one of the power strip things and think you have electricity. It's a negative feedback loop, circuitous narrative. So for me, that was just 5 years ago. It's 2019, and really, thankfully and gratefully, our entire family. I didn't lead them. I didn't tell my kids, "You're not going to believe this anymore." I said, do your own research. Look at it here. Here's what I found, but you do your own. Wife is the same way. My wife was ahead of me as well. And this isn't to come on here and just bash people's faith.
No, I've had it.
No.
The point of this show, John, is that there's no one way to take care of your mental health. There's no
Right. Well,
one size fits all thing.
and
If the church is what makes you sleep at night, then good for you. As long as you don't use your church to tell me how to live, as long as your religion puts the restrictions on you and not me, like we're fine.
Right.
We've had a minister on here who's a friend of mine who I've stayed in his house. He is a person that believes things that I don't, but he also is the closest thing to being what a Christian's supposed to be that I know. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't judge people. He doesn't. He believes. Like I think he's never come out and say. I think he believes gay people are going to go to hell. I think that he believes that, but he doesn't want to damn them to hell. He doesn't want to make them not gay. He doesn't want to prevent them from having rights on earth or any of the, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So, because he's one of those guys, he goes, I remember him distinctly saying at one point, now this is where it gets offensive. Sometimes it gets offensive. Sometimes this religion can get offensive.
Well,
This is where it gets offensive. The Bible's clear on this. I believe in the Bible, and the Bible's clear on this. But the Bible is also clear in saying that I'm not the judge.
And I've been,
so he's not a conversion camp person,
right,
by any means.
I've been,
but I'm okay with. At the end of the day, I'm okay with that being his belief as long as he doesn't try to enforce it.
Or,
you know what I mean?
Or use his belief to deny someone else liberty and the pursuit of their own happiness.
Exactly.
And I am fine with faith, but if you cross that line, then I am going to do all I can to point out the fallacies, the inconsistencies, and the bullshit within your faith. Because I think that's one thing that's been lost in American discourse, or maybe never existed, but certainly it exists over in Western Europe, which is also where the Catholic Church and the Christian religion basically rose to power at sword point. So they've been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, and they've moved on. Is if you can believe what you want to believe, I have no problem with that. And if that helps you live your best life in a Christ-like way, then we need more people like that, regardless of what you may think of me behind closed doors. But when you take what you believe and you say that everyone has to believe this, that your beliefs have to be taught in a classroom in Oklahoma, taped to the wall with the 10 Commandments of the Bible without any regard for what is in, another monotheistic, holy book, the Quran, which I also think is, not my thing, et cetera, then that's when you become, I don't want to say my enemy, but what you believe becomes my enemy, and I'm going to speak out and fight against it.
Well, John, I've said on this pod several times, I'm a walking anomaly when it comes to this stuff, because I go to mass every Sunday. I'm very deep in my faith, but I am probably the least Catholic person that you will meet. I don't believe half of what they want me to believe, because I just don't believe in a God that believes in hatred and not kindness. And I'm not saying that that everybody I go to the Catholic Church with is like that. But I told Bill this in February. I went to a men's retreat. I do this men's retreat every year. I talk about my story. I talk about cancer. I talk about my healing and what you said earlier, right? I had one option, which was to go forward. And I believe that God helped me with that. But I also say in that witness that I give, I'm not your typical Catholic person. My son is transgender. I love him unconditionally. Nobody will ever convince me in this church or others. And I know that there are people in this room with me right now that believe that he's mentally ill and it's a sin. And I don't care what you think. And I struggle
your
with that.
son's not trying to box other women
right
in front of God and everybody.
But I struggle.
Fair. All of a sudden, I give a shit about women's rights when it comes to combat sports.
I hadn't even thought about that.
But I struggle every day with being in a faith that I care about, that the majority of the people and the majority of the dialogue is.
So why do you fucking care about it? Like, is it just?
I don't care about it. I'm saying I struggle with.
Right. Yeah.
I struggle with the other things around me. I'm perfectly fine with where I'm at.
Why do you have to keep going to the Catholic Church? Why do you have to keep going there? Why can't you go find a religion, a church that more closely fits how you think? Because it's got to be out there. It's got to be.
I'm sure it does, but because.
Are you afraid you'll go to hell if you don't stay Catholic?
Not at all. Not at all.
Is it a tradition and a comfort?
I take comfort
that brings you close to your. I
take comfort in. I believe that Jesus comes in the Eucharist. I believe that Jesus is there for me, and I also believe that Jesus. That there are hundreds and hundreds of and thousands of examples where men have twisted Jesus's teachings for their own personal gain, and I know where it is for me, and I take comfort in taking the Eucharist. I enjoy going to Mass with my wife. I enjoy the music. I enjoy, and I like.
Really, you
Father
enjoy the
Kirby.
music at the fucking Mass?
I do.
You are white as fuck, dude.
No, dude, like I respect that because there are things, the community aspect of it, I somewhat miss.
The fellowship.
Yeah,
everybody loves a little fellowship. You can get that in a barbershop quartet.
You can.
You
can. I just for me, any organized religion, I'm out.
That's where I'm at.
I'm still very spiritual. I mean, whether you call it a prayer or what, I do that on a very regular basis, almost nightly. I mean, honestly,
I call it goal setting.
Yeah, well, yeah, that too. But like, I guess for me, I have never thought more clearly. No, I'm not going into that poem from Meet the Fockers or whatever. I've never had a stronger ability to critically think since I shed the scales of religion off of my eyes.
Right.
I have written hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages on faith-based essays, on spiritual essays, on if I believe there's a God, I think he's a scientist, and I can tell you why. And the TV show Lost is what led me to that. Wonderfully entertaining hypothesis. I just love to question, but here's the best part of why I love me right now more than I ever have. I don't fucking care what the answer is. I don't need an answer. I'm perfectly content marinating in unknowing.
That's 100% where I've said that over and over on this podcast. That's I don't understand why people can't just admit they don't know and leave it at that.
Right. Because honestly, Bill, like if hell's real, okay, which I don't believe that it is, but if hypothetically, let's say that it were real, even though it is a probably 3rd or 4th century invention to control people. It wasn't around in any biblical.
That's what I feel like religion really is anyway. It's a way. I think everything was bred from a way to control your kids when you're not around.
It's possible. It's like it's just like Santa Claus, right?
100%.
God sees you when
how can we have Santa Claus all the time?
Right.
Well,
right.
God.
Exactly. So I if hell were real, that is not a God that is worth my veneration or worship. And they'll say, well, John, you've been given free will. You tell me, what does free will sound like this? I love you so much. I want nothing bad to happen for you. I don't want you to be away from me. But if you don't come to me, I will torture you for all eternity. That's not love. That's not free will. That's authoritarian fascism, and I want no part of that.
I'm with you. Is that?
That's your dog.
Is it my dog?
It's my dog. It's my
your
dog.
dog.
It's like one of our dogs is snoring.
And I'm sorry, it's Ginger.
It happens a lot on your other
What
pod,
kind
too.
of
I hear
dog
it all
is
the time.
she?
It's a King Charles Cavalier, and I got to say, 3 nights ago, I think she might have found a half-smoked joint, and I had to take her to the vet because she was high as a kite.
Good old John. I would have given anything to smoke a joint with you when we had lunch that day in Tulsa.
Well, I don't smoke weed before 5, but if you're in Kansas City after 5, I'm game. I'm not quite.
Hey, I'll be there in November.
Yeah, I'm not quite. I didn't quite break as hard as Walter White. I didn't break bad. I feel like I broke good.
I think you did. I have loved watching your evolution. Like, you are everything. Like, I think I mentioned before we got on about the storytellers thing I did. I'll send it to you after so you can watch it. Because I think you'll make a lot of connections there. Like, and that's kind of what I'm talking about is, like, from the very beginning, from the jump, the key to the survival of the human race is evolution. Period. We have had to constantly evolve to fit nature in order to survive on planet Earth. And it wasn't anything we made a conscious effort to do. It just happened. It was nature. Well, as time goes on, I think that evolution becomes more of the brain than physical characteristics, or, you know, shedding the gills so that we breathe on Earth if you believe we used to be fish, or whatever, all those things, you know. I think that evolution is, I think our brains evolved as well, but I think that as time goes on,
we were eating psilocybin mushrooms on the savannah and our brains blew up.
Yeah.
Stoned ape theory.
It's what?
The stoned ape theory. That's a real theory. It's a real.
That's a real theory.
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I have to smoke weed after 5 with John in Missouri so that we can talk about things like the stoned ape.
Look, you know what,
theory.
Bill? I'll send you a link to some of my writings. These things aren't going to see the light of day until I retire in about 4 or 5 years. Then for my last act, I'm going to be doing what you guys are doing on a, you know, jack of all trades type of podcast, and also writing, you know, philosophy books. My only intended audience is for my daughters, and to leave them a guidebook on, you know, it's like this book I wrote for them a couple of Christmases ago. You know, Dad's Wisdoms. You know, it's about 100 pages long. Just things things about life. And I just
have a firm handshake.
Yes. Like, you know, there's always another exit. There's always another deer, but then you can take those things and extrapolate them into analogies for life. And I just, you know, I don't care about if those are ever read by anyone else per se. Mm-hmm. I don't need any more slaps on the back. I don't need any more name and lights. If anything, I will be doing less of these things going forward, not more, until, you know, I do it for myself. But I want to interview people like Neil deGrasse Tyson. I want to talk particle physics with them. I want to talk Large Hadron Collider and the you know, the Higgs boson and things like that I'm fascinated by. And I write about every night that causes my mind to expand, and it breaks out of these boundaries that I lived in for the first 49 years of my life. And I want to spend the rest of my years limitless. And
I feel like you've almost had this rebirth to where, like, you sound like when I first started smoking weed when I was like 16.
Dude, but I'm sober. Like, I haven't smoked any today. And
no, I know, but I'm saying, like, what I mean by that is, like, there's this childlike rebirth. It's like you have this childlike view of the world. You're seeing all these things for the first time.
Yes.
So it's like you're a child again.
Yeah. No, I believe that. Well,
and it's so fun. It's fun to watch.
Well, yeah, a 53-year-old big man child. But, you know, we talked about psilocybin earlier. My wife and I did shrooms together last June.
Awesome. I was just going to ask you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you talked about you talk about the rebirth. You talk about the neuroregenesis and the neuroplasticity that our brains have, and that when you take psilocybin in a controlled setting and safely, and you take a large enough dose to break past that default mode network, there are regions of our brains that communicate with one another that haven't communicated with each other since we were children. And we were doing things like picking up pears and getting stung by wasps and being scared of wasps for the rest of our lives, which I was, because our default mode network is there to protect us as an evolutionary benefit, and it makes shortcuts. And sometimes it makes fucked up shortcuts. Because if you grew up in a home with a racist parent and they said, end this, end bomb that, then you grew up seeing that, instantly thinking that, and that is not a good thing. And that's just one example of the downside of the default mode network. And what psilocybin does, it allows you to achieve escape velocity, break past that default mode network nanny freaking state that we have in our own minds. Different parts of your brain begin talking to one another again, and you actually, you can change your life. You can change your mental health. The studies that they're doing right now that they should never have stopped doing 50 years ago, except for fucking Nixon and politics and having the war on drugs, like marijuana ever should have been a Schedule 1. Psilocybin, different story, but psilocybin shouldn't be a Schedule 1, because anybody that says that psilocybin's addictive has never done psilocybin, and they're idiots. Because the last thing you want to do the next day after you do psilocybin is do more psilocybin.
Yeah.
I mean, that's also, like once a year marathon.
It also is, well, and that depends on how much. I mean, how much, you know. Usually, I'm a
2.5 guy.
I always found with shrooms, it was, if you ever did acid, acid's a 12-hour deal. Like one hit of acid, that's a 12-hour deal. Yeah,
I'm out. Yeah, I haven't.
Shrooms is more like 4 or 5.
Yeah,
you know, and if you've done acid, shrooms is not a marathon at all. It's a short little trip, you know?
Yeah, it's good enough.
So like I've always preferred shrooms. And you're right about it. It's funny, like when you describe the way your brain communicates, because another thing about it, they can't be addictive, because when it comes to psilocybin or anything that makes you trip, your body builds an immediate tolerance. So if you take 2.5 grams one day and you take 2.5 the next day, you'll feel nothing.
Yeah, the efficacy lowers for sure.
So you have to take more and more and more. Yeah. And nobody's ever going to do that.
No.
Not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, and I still haven't drank since 2006, and I'm never going to. It's like, it seems stupid now.
Yeah. So and that's what's great about shrooms. You microdose and go to a concert. You don't need alcohol. You feel great and you drink water.
Yeah, I've only done it twice. And it's like a once a year thing. My wife and I did it again this summer, and probably won't do it again until next summer, but we did MDMA this summer, and that was really beneficial for us.
See, that I haven't done yet, and I would love to. What
it just brought us, you know, people say, oh, MDMA, you're probably just rolling around the sheets all day. It's like, no, man, we connected on an emotional level that we really never had connected on. It was really powerful, and it was fantastic.
Would you go to an ayahuasca retreat?
Nope.
You wouldn't do that.
No, not for me. I think I've done the.
You've reached the limit.
I hate the word psychedelics. I prefer entheogens. MDMA and psilocybin are probably the only two I'm going to do. I am fascinated. Have you probably heard it? Is it Shane Wells, that psilocybin psychedelic comedian? Shane something. You would like him, I think.
I don't know him. No,
he gives some explanations to DMT trips, like, and you see that on Rogan. And to me, the science and the mystery behind the commonalities and shared trip experiences of people that take DMT are really fascinating to me. The same encounters, and yes, maybe it's a psychosomatic projection because everybody's heard about.
You've heard the story,
DMT, right? So I, from a scientific standpoint, I grant you that. But these otherworldly, not extraterrestrial, but just other level of intelligence beings that everyone seems to encounter, and the entire removal of what normal is. Man, that sounds like some breakthrough shit in there. And so many people saying, "Hey, glad you finally found us." Took you
Which
long
is
enough
almost
to get here.
almost scary.
It is.
Yeah.
So I won't do it because you have to. Apparently, you got to take 3 hits to get past the default mode network, and it sounds like the first hit is the hardest, most crazy thing you've ever done in your life. And it comes on like that. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm not interested, because being sober for all those years led me to really appreciate being in control.
In control, yeah.
And that's what I really enjoy about cannabis is I can climb up that ladder as many rungs as I want to and however I want to. And then I'll be back down in an hour and I'm great. I kind of like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for all of it, and that's another thing when you talk about indoctrination and the war on drugs, and I growing up, what a loser I thought somebody that smoked pot was.
Right.
Like when I was in like 5th grade, like, oh man, like in 5th grade, I was ready to be the hero, like. Get that away from me, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Me and McGruff is tight.
Yeah. Like, don't you even. It was,
it was on different strokes and, Nancy Reagan. It was ubiquitous. And it was all because Nixon did not like the way that his political fortunes were going in the 1960s, and he created this war on drug, and he was the law and order candidate. And anytime you hear a politician stand on a ticket of law and order, you know that there a lot of racist things are preparing to come out of their mouths shortly thereafter. Nixon's Southern strategy and things of that nature. So it was all bullshit. And think of how many tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people, maybe billions when you consider the planet, have had to suffer needlessly for the past half century, and still do in many countries. I mean, I went to Europe for the first time in my life back in June. I mean, there's no cannabis. I mean, it's like how it was in America, 20 years ago or 30 years ago when I was in college. I mean, you can find it.
Yeah.
But now they got, fentanyl. I'm not going to do anything that I don't know what it is.
Right.
Andrew and I did my wife and I did, our MDMA. We got a little chemistry set. We got fentanyl checkers. We got scales. We're making sure that we were in a very controlled setting. So all the people that suffered needlessly this last 60 years since the studies in the 1970s were shut down at Johns Hopkins, all because of politics and the people who could have been helped and where we would be relative to science and medicine and understanding of how entheogens can help all various types of mental illness. My daughter, 2022, coming full circle to the first question I think you asked me, and we're out of time for question 2. I'm just kidding. In September of 22, she called me up. I was up in Iowa visiting my parents. She called me up crying, and the gist of that conversation was I didn't think she was going to make it. So we instantly left. I drive back. She was at an absolute low point. Her depression was horrible. And I mentioned that she'd been diagnosed with bipolar 2, which typically means that you struggle more with the depression than the mania. And we were at our wits' end, and my wife just went online and did what she did. She powered through, and she found some interesting things on ketamine, and made a few calls, found a ketamine treatment clinic in Overland Park, Kansas, got her in. It was her last ketamine infusion. She did an infusion every other day for 2 weeks. I would take her there. I'd pick her up in Lawrence, Kansas, drive her to, that's 45 minutes to Kansas City, then drive her home. She's tripping balls. She's like, "Dad, I'm a star." And I'm like, "Okay, now you're sounding like old John Miller here." She's like, No, not that kind of stuff. I'm a star. I was out with the stars. We are stars. We are celestial beings, kind of like that old, we're spiritual beings having a human experience kind of a thing. Yeah. And the things that she was talking about just left me stunned, and like, this makes a great deal of sense. And again, I'm not really looking for universal answers. I don't care,
man.
But I enjoy talking about them. And that experience for her, there was like after the 4th session, she looked over at me and said, "Dad, I don't know how I ever thought I could hurt myself. Life is so precious. Life is so valuable. I can't believe I ever thought of taking my own life." And dropped her off. I cried all the way home. I was so grateful and thankful. That was also a time when, I was more spiritual than religious. That's only been 2 years ago, not even 2 years ago. But I just felt such gratitude that's when I started praying again. And I even say all the time, like, I don't know if I don't know if it's you. I know it's not the God of the Old Testament because that's batshit crazy. Jesus, I can buy you the consciousness of Christ in the universe. Maybe we call it Christ. Maybe in another planet they call it blah 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 or whatever. There's a prime mover. There has to be until science proves otherwise.
Seems like it.
Which is why I'm okay with people who are very religious that are skeptical of evolution as the only answer in the Big Bang, because where's the prime mover? It's not a satisfying answer that there always just was, or there was nothing and there was something, because we can't replicate that anywhere else in science.
And God could be responsible for evolution. That might be the whole fucking deal.
Right.
Like look at Clash of the Titans when Zeus would just put the little figure on the thing, and
But who was the prime mover for God?
Yeah, exactly.
Who made God? Who made God? Who made God? Who made God?
Yeah.
And that is a mind blower. It's like the old days when we were kids. You plug the video cord in your television, you point it at the TV, and it's infinite. Right. Yeah. Or you're standing in between two mirrors.
Two mirrors, yeah.
It never stops.
Right.
Which then makes me think, is this all just a program, a computer simulation? But that means there's a computer programmer, right?
Right.
And then you start to think that time may not be linear. It may already be played out, and then that's when the mind blows, and that's when the weed goes, and that's when the magic happens with the keyboard.
Let's get a quick break, and then let's come back, because I got to get this break in. What?
I just missed that phase of my life when I didn't smoke weed to feel normal.
We're 5 minutes late on you. Normally we take the break when he gets to the mushroom talk. So that's usually when I know we need to reset. I'm not judging.
Just so you know,
it's a tradition on this show.
There's a clock on when I will bring up shrooms in every show because I believe in it when it comes to mental health.
Yeah.
But there is also a clock on when Chris will bring up this fucking men's retreat and how he gives his testimony every year. That's so right. We're in the same.
We're in the same wheel.
Chris, right. I mean, are we talking in the show now, or is this when the ads are playing?
No, we're about to go to him. I just interrupted him.
Okay.
Nope. I'm gonna play this ad and then we'll come back.
Making great tasting bourbon requires the perfect combination of ingredients, conditions, and time. The longer it rests, the better it tastes. Revelton Distillery's new single barrel bourbon is made from 80% corn, sourced 100% from Iowa farmers. And unlike mass-produced bourbons, each barrel of Revelton's single barrel bourbon is unique, proofed on when it tastes best. As they like to say, it'll be ready when it's ready. And to ensure the highest standards of quality and flavor, owners Rob and Christy Taylor oversee the production and bottling. Every single barrel. Iowa born, Iowa aged, Iowa bottled. Try the new single barrel bourbon from Iowa's own Revelton Distillery. ReveltonDistillery.com.
All right, and we're back. Thanks again to our sponsors, Revelton Distilling Company. John, I'm going to read you a tweet that I put out earlier today in response to there was a news story of this mega church in Des Moines that is going to take over the AMC Theater in Johnston.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
This is also the church that had a political rally for Ron DeSantis in the church, which instantly put my hackles up. The mixture of politics and government and religion is one of the most dangerous things in history. Nothing good has ever come from it. You look at history, the most evil things have been done in the form of religion. And Jesus specifically taught us that there's no place for that.
Mm-hmm.
Reaction to that.
Absolutely true. You go back and look at Hitler's acceptance speech, and you look at a lot of his the terms that he used when he was campaigning. It is.
Oh, did it sound like every politician now?
No, not every, but a certain specific one.
Yeah. I mean, they all have every politician models themselves after, like, Hitler basically showed the way. Like, this is how you win. Yeah. Like he said, Hitler literally said in Mein Kampf that he's basically talking about how the best speaker always wins. And he says, I'm going to be such a good speaker that I'm going to be able to vehemently lie about my enemies and everyone will believe me.
Yeah, because at some point in time, people get tired and worn out to correct you. And we've reached that with American media. American media is no longer dropping their jaws at the shit that he says and Donald Trump says and does on a daily basis
Tired.
because we're fatigued by it. But thankfully, I feel that enough Americans are going to stand up and say, you know what? This is bullshit. We're not doing it anymore. A lot of people that have voted Republicans their whole life. I voted straight ticket Republican my entire life until 2020. It's the first time I ever voted for a Democrat for any race in my life. I do not consider myself a Democrat. I proudly checked the independent mark when I registered to vote in the state of Missouri here, when I just recently checked it again. And wasn't registered, by the way, which is really interesting, even though I voted in 2022. When you combine politics and religion, that's when people get hurt and that's when people die. And the things that, the aspects of Project 2025, apparently some of these guys, I think some of these politicians are the kind of guys that were masturbating to The Handmaid's Tale. It turned them on so much, those scenes in the Commander scene. That's the world that they want to live in.
Yeah,
and
I love the way you put that, because I would have said, like, hey, that's the guy that fucking jerked off to whatever. Like, just the eloquence, the difference in our eloquence in saying the same thing. Like, I've actually said to somebody, I think you should just go jerk off with a belt around your neck and see what happens. Like,
yeah, it didn't work out really good for the NXS lead singer, did it?
Nor David Carradine. Robin Williams, that one's up in the air.
Yeah,
not sure on that one. But if you've seen World's Greatest Dad, anyway.
Yeah. It's a historically bad mix. And what breaks my heart and scrambles my mind is the number of people that I've known for 40 plus years of my life. And I'm 53. And in some instances, nearly every single one of those years. What they now believe to be truth. What they believe about other people because their leader is telling them these things. And it's disgusting. And the number of families that have been torn asunder over the past 6 to 7 years because of cult-like worship and veneration for one of the least worthy persons in the history of this country to worship and put on a pedestal. I don't get it. I never will. But then again, part of me does kind of get it, because I believe a lot of these same people suspend disbelief in so many other aspects of their lives that it's very simple for them to do it now. And it's easy for them to believe that their way of life is threatened. They're coming for them. Yeah. Tim Walz put tampons in the boys' bathrooms, which of course he fucking didn't. They're putting cat litter
boxes. That's
furries, which of course they fucking didn't. Use your goddamn brains. Right. And that's the kind of stuff that I get really pissed off about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed. And I actually was just saying this on stage recently because I saw this meme, and it's funny because it's one of those things that I've said knowing that I was hoping that I would get to a laugh out of it. Not that like this would get a laugh.
Right.
Like it would get more of a knowing, like, yeah, which it does, but I still haven't figured out how to get it to a laugh. But essentially I saw this meme that it's a map of the country and it's all red.
Right.
And it says, the funny thing about these memes is you almost can read them in a Southern accent every time, and it works.
Yeah.
It's like you automatically go to that, and that's not fair to Southern people, by the way, but
to some. But you know, if you do overlay the state by state average ACT score and you cover it in red, it's a fucking flat circle Venn diagram.
Yeah, and so flat circle Venn diagram. So I said, this meme, it's all red, and then it has like some blue dots like on the coast and like, you know, Chicago-ish.
Yeah.
And it's like There's no blue states. There's just a handful of big cities telling the rest of us how to live our lives.
Right. And even though the land doesn't vote, but I do want to make one thing clear.
That's why the Electoral College exists. But
the Electoral College exists because of racists and slavery,
Yes.
and it's no surprise that no other democracy in the planet adopted the Electoral College. It's a purely American racist relic. But I want to be clear. I'm not, the things I've said here about politics. I'm not talking about Republicans per se. I'm talking about MAGA, the MAGA party.
Right.
I hope that the Republicans need to take an L this time around if they're ever going to get their party back. If you don't, if you keep just going with it, just hoping, you're never going to come back. Your only chance to be a party again is take the L. Stand with the Democrats to defeat Donald Trump and MAGA. Donald Trump and MAGA will never be a threat again for a presidential election. There'll still be some MAGA candidates in the House. You'll still have your racist districts around the country, and the Marjorie Taylor Greens are still going to be there. But by and large, they'll be toothless and defanged. I think it's already happening.
They're already toothless. Dun-dun-dun. But anyway. So,
and we've got John for about another 10 minutes. So
gotcha. Yeah. Well, so the meme anyway, it says this, right? And what I've been saying is like, okay, how many, like, I'm from Iowa. I'm from Des Moines, obviously. Like, we've all got friends who live in the middle of nowhere. We've all been
to
somebody's house in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And do they not do whatever the fuck they want anyway in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah.
No matter what everybody's trying to tell them to do.
Right.
You have to you have to make them feel attacked in order to get them to vote for you. And no one's attacking shit. And they have to invent this plight. Nobody's coming after you at all. If you live, I still to this day can do a show somewhere where it's illegal to smoke inside almost everywhere in the country. But go to fucking some town in Alabama that you're in the only bar in town. You think they give a fuck? There's ashtrays everywhere. Everybody's smoking. Nobody gives a shit.
Right.
And nobody's going to tell them that they can't.
No. That's a brave soul. They call that a hero down the South. They also call them martyrs because you're not getting out of there alive.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, there's still people that I deeply love and I consider friends that I know are not going to, they're going to vote differently than me, and that's okay. Yeah. But they're also not out on a street corner, holding signs that ostracize, belittle, and harm people. Either that's people wanting the choice of their reproductive rights, that's people wanting to love who they want and when they want, and people that understand that the term homosexual wasn't even in a Bible until the 1940s, and it was a German inclusion, and that Paul made up words arsenokotai and malakoi that were basically about effeminate boys and pederasty and had nothing to do with the state of relations between men and women. Sexual orientation wasn't even in the realm back in the early.
It was about this guy not being able to hunt and gather. It wasn't about him not being like wanting to have butt sex with dudes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just but they're not out there trying to take away other people's rights. I'm like, all right, you do you.
But are they? I mean, they're not out there yelling about it, but when they vote that way, that's what's hard.
It's very difficult
because it's like, well, your vote is making that happen, is allowing that. And I'm saying this from both sides. And this is where people will have that argument of this is why I'm better than you.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes from, because essentially, yeah, we all want to say like, they vote, our politics are different. Well, but if your politics says that my sister shouldn't be able to do the same thing that your sister can do because of one reason or another, are you really? I mean, is complacency not the same thing?
Silence is violence is kind
Yeah.
of where you're headed, and it's difficult. I mean, because in Chris's shoes, he's got a child that there are many people voting for a specific candidate who,
based on hatred and making fun of this shit.
who put Chris's child at Chris's child's life at risk.
Have some
Right.
in my own family.
Yep.
That say that they love him and will turn around.
I
and
love
go vote,
the sinner, not
and
the
will
sin.
and will go vote in the ballot box against their own interests, including his own mother.
And
His
see, that's-
own mother, when they were together this summer, Tyler went and used the men's restroom, and afterwards his mother went to him and said, "You embarrassed me, and if you do that again, you could be arrested." And I basically told Tyler, "You need to tell your mom to go get fucked."
yeah, like,
I mean, that's unfortunate.
and see,
It's
that takes
very
me
unfair.
back to what I was going to ask you when you were talking about continuing with the Catholic Church. Do you, and you almost answered it, why I didn't ask, because you were basically saying you enjoy going to mass with your wife, yada, yada, yada. But I often hear about your battles, right? So what percentage of the time do you walk in and out of that church and feel good?
80%.
Okay, well, I guess I can't fucking hate it.
And and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I don't leave. Because deep in my heart, I know what I feel is the way you should feel, and I'll be damned if I'm going to let them drive me out.
Yeah.
I respect
Yeah, I
that.
mean that. I just wonder, like, I just feel like you can do a lot of the stuff that you enjoy about it.
And also,
you could do
if me being there makes them uncomfortable, all the better for me.
but you could also just take that 20% out, start your own religion, and never have to pay taxes again.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what Jeremy said. Start Church Chris,
Yeah.
tax exempt and accept
Right.
everyone. That would be me.
100%.
So, all right.
Well, there's one thing I want to say too before I go, because like Lutheran Church of Hope in West Des Moines was a big part of my life for a number of years. Pastor Mike Householder, he's one of my all-time favorite human beings. He played a role in my still being alive and not going through some things that I went through. I love him like a brother, and I always will. I am not against people finding comfort in their faith, as we
Not
said
at all,
earlier.
yeah.
It's just
No.
that when you begin to use that faith as a weapon, and
Yes.
that takes another person's liberty away from them. It's that old phrase that a Supreme Court justice had a long time ago. Your personal rights and liberties end where my nose begins. Like, as opposed, like, I can swing a fist, but once you swing that fist and it hits my nose, you've violated another right, and you don't have a right to do that. And that's how I see religion. You have every right in this country because of how the Establishment Clause was written. By the way, the Establishment Clause was a protection against religion as much as it was standing up for people's freedoms to express. Congress shall pass no laws that limit the freedom of expression of religion or the freedom thereof, or limits to it. That's what the Establishment Clause is. It's both ways. So I'm great. You want to do what you do in your house and behind your closed doors and with your family, that's fine. But if that crosses a line and gets out into the public sector like politics, or you're out at schools preaching hate and things like that, then I'm your enemy. And I look forward to seeing you on the field.
Yeah, or if behind closed doors you're fucking your kids and saying God told you to, or you can't do
Well,
that.
I don't know that anybody in the Southern Baptist Convention is going to see this.
Well, I'm not surprised that this was absolutely
Not a drag queen.
phenomenal, right? John, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm sure you remember you were on Old Man Strength a couple years ago, and I've just always admired your progression and your perspective and your friendship. So I appreciate you coming on. Thanks everybody for listening to the Three Beards Media Network. John, Bill, if you'll stick on really quick, I want to ask you something after we get off the air. Otherwise, everybody, thanks a lot. Have a great night.